All right, Finance Chapter 9, Video 2.2. We're picking up on page 195. We're going to be talking about health insurance. Health insurance is really important. I've got quite a few stories on this one, so expect to be paused pretty often. The video lecture is about 10 minutes. Hopefully I won't stretch this past 20. And let it begin.
Health insurance, only 59%, that's 6 out of 10 workers in the U.S. have health insurance now furnished at work. Only 59%. Now, how do you save on your health insurance? Just like anything else, you increase your deductible and or your co-insurance amount. So how many of you pay for your own or a portion of your own health insurance right now? Raise your hand. Now, see, it's about half of the room. That's about with the national statistics. And so it's a war we fight. I pay for mine, right? It's a huge battle with the ever-increasing cost. This stuff goes up like a rocket, doesn't it? Say yes. Yes. So we're constantly fighting for ways to keep our costs down on health insurance. Now, one of the ways to do that is to raise your deductible. And so hardly any of us that pay for our own carry a $250 deductible, do we? Most of us carry $1,000 or more in a deductible on that. So you kick that up. Again, if you got a $10,000 emergency fund, you can afford to do that. Now, a lot of policies are, the co-insurance amount are set up on like 80-20. So after the deductible, the insurance company pays 80% and we pay 20%. Now, you can change that co-insurance amount so you take on a little more risk, they take on a little less. In insurance, anytime you take on more risk and they take on less risk, then what happens to your premiums? They go down because they're taking less risk, we're taking more risk. So if we went from an 80-20 where they pay 80% to a 70-30 where they're only paying 70% and we're paying 30%, they would be taking on less risk. So that'll get your premiums down just like lowering your deductible. That's a good idea. Now, one thing you all...
Okay, so what he's talking about with 80-20 is the percentage of the cost. And there's a reason why in healthcare they do percentages of the cost as opposed to dollar amounts. Because, you know, healthcare can be very expensive. I'm pretty sure some of you guys didn't realize an ambulance ride cost about, you know, $8,000 to $14,000, depending on what ambulance you're in, what company's running the ambulance, and what care they give you in the back of the ambulance. So, you know, before health insurance kicks in, you're paying about $8,000 to $14,000 just to ride in an ambulance to get to an emergency room. And so that's why they do it in percentages. So if you do 80% of a $10,000 ambulance ride, that's $8,000. You pay 20% or $2,000. You change that to 70-30, you're paying $3,000. So remember when he said if you got a $10,000 emergency fund, that will help lower your premium every month. In this case, having the best health insurance possible is always probably the best insurance you can get. Health insurance is where I would say it's worth it to pay a little more every month to raise that covered percentage, especially if your emergency fund is not that high, or if you're trying to build up your emergency fund. The higher percentage that the health insurance will cover, the better off you are. Now, I don't know if he talks about this. There's a maximum deductible amount. The book calls it the stop loss pay. That's what he's going to talk about next. You know, I'll let him talk before I give my 2 cents on it.
What you want to do is you want to increase your stop loss, never decrease your maximum pay. Now let me explain what that means. Stop loss is your maximum out of pocket. If you have a $10,000 stop loss, you'd pay your deductible plus your 20% of the 80-20 till you got up to $10,000. After $10,000, they'd pay 100%. Okay? So it's a good idea. You can pick up a little more. You could, if you got a $15,000 emergency fund, you could take a $15,000 or even a $20,000 stop loss as long as they pay 100% after that. See, I'm not worried about the $10,000 or $15,000 or $20,000 event if I've got an emergency fund. What I'm worried about is the $150,000 or $200,000 event, right? You too? Say right. Okay, so if my stop loss, even if I'm going to pay out of pocket up there to $15,000 or $20,000, I can handle that. I'll work my way through that, and after that they pay 100%. So if you've got a $5,000 stop loss now, you might investigate taking it to a $15,000 if you have a fully funded emergency fund. Again, dropping your premiums, but do not let them reduce the maximum pay. The maximum pay is.
Okay, so what he's talking about with the stop loss, I think my insurance company calls it a maximum, or it calls it an annual cap, or annual premium cap. That's the phrase that my insurance company uses. And different insurance companies will use different phrases. It's more important that you understand the concept than the word. Maybe more insurance companies call it a stop loss, and mine's just different. I don't know. But the point is, that 80, 20, 70, 30% thing that we were just telling you about, that is the maximum that they will let you pay a year as the insuree, or the person being insured, the beneficiary. That's the word I'm looking for, as the beneficiary. So, let's say, you decide to get a motorcycle, and then you crash your motorcycle on the freeway, and they can't take you to the hospital on an ambulance. They have to airlift you, and then you get to the hospital, and then you have to get multiple surgeries at the hospital because you crashed your motorcycle so bad that they couldn't even move you in an ambulance, and they had to go save your life in the hospital. So you have to pay for the helicopter ride. You have to pay for the life-saving machines that they used on the helicopter. Like, let's say you stopped breathing on the helicopter and they had to hook you up to one of those things that breathes for you. I forget what those machines are called. And then they give you a surgery as soon as you get to the hospital to stop you from bleeding, and then they patch you up. And at the end of it, you end up owing the hospital like $300,000 because they saved your life. Well, if we did the percentages there, let's say you're on a 70-30 plan, 30% of $300,000 is $90,000. That's not something just about anyone can pay. So that's where the maximum annual cap would come in, or what they call the stop loss cap. So if your stop loss cap is set at $10,000, $15,000, $30,000, whatever it is, instead of paying that $90,000, you pay the cap amount, and then the insurance company will cover the rest. So that's how those work. They're very useful. Now, and it's funny, that story I just told you about crashing your motorcycle and getting airlifted, that actually happened to a friend of mine back in 2011. Yeah, he was riding his motorcycle in Alabama, crashed in the middle of the woods. Not in the middle of the woods, but he was on a highway in the middle of nowhere. He ended up crashing really bad, and they airlifted him to a hospital, and his final hospital bill was about $300,000. He didn't pay that much, but that's what the initial cost of what it was to save his life. So, true stories. These things can get very expensive. All right, let's continue.
The maximum they'll pay out total. So you get in chemo land, you get in a triple, quadruple bypass thing, and they got $1 million cap on what they'll pay. Everything after $1 million, you are on your own. If they lower that to $500,000, you're on your own. And so that is not a good buy, to drop down your...
So now what he's talking about is the insurance's maximum cap. So the same way that you have a maximum cap on that percentage, the insurance also has a maximum cap. So let's say, let's go back to that motorcycle example. It was $300,000 to save his life. Let's say the insurance's maximum cap was $200,000. Well, they would pay, so he pays $30,000. Let's say that his maximum cap is $30,000. So of that $300,000 to save his life, he pays $30,000. Still $270 left. But then the insurance kicks in, and the insurance says, okay, we're going to pay the rest. But then the insurance goes, oh, whoa, wait a minute. We have a maximum cap too. Our maximum cap was $200,000. So of that $270 remaining, we're only going to pay $200,000. Guess who gets the remaining $70,000? That's right. It would be you. So make sure the maximum cap is high, and then the annual cap can be you can adjust that. All right. So what he's saying is, don't ever lessen the amount that the insurance company's maximum cap is. The $500,000 mark is a good start, but cancer treatment costs a lot. So $1 million cap, that's usually, you're good to go there. $500,000 is a good start, because like I said, a motorcycle accident that almost kills you is $300,000 for one person. If you have insurance for a family, you really got to start raising that cap, because let's say you get in a car accident and you and one of your kids both need life-saving treatment. That could be $300,000 for each of you. Okay, so stuff to think about.
Hey, always keep that up there at least $1 million. It doesn't save you much to drop that one down, but your first dollars down here, your deductibles and your maximum stop loss, your maximum out of pocket thing, those are good buys and can keep your premiums down. The best thing out there though is the new HSA. See if an HSA, a health savings account, will make sense for your specific situation. The HSA, the health savings account, is a tax-sheltered savings account for medical expenses with a high deductible insurance policy. Now let's look at the numbers on this. I pulled these for an actual 30-year-old couple in our area. An actual 30-year-old couple were to buy a major medical health plan. They would be paying about $640 a month. For that, they'd get a $500 deductible with an 80/20 copay. So after they meet their deductible, then the insurance company would pay 80%, the young couple would pay 20% after that. And that's a pretty standard health plan, isn't it? Say yes. $640.
Yeah, so $640 a month for a couple, that doesn't exist anymore. Like I said, these recordings are dated by about 10 years. There's been a lot of fluctuations in healthcare since then. The biggest hit to healthcare was the Affordable Care Act. Not sure what you guys will learn about it, but seeing as how I lived through it, I can give you my 2 cents on it. What the Affordable Care Act did was it boosted healthcare costs up to about $1,000 a month for a couple. So people, their health insurance, it almost doubled overnight. People for families, their rates went up to $1,500 to $1,800 a month to pay for insurance for their family. Keep in mind, this was called the Affordable Care Act. More or less what it was a plan to try to incentivize everyone to buying government-run healthcare as opposed to private markets. It ended up messing up the private markets. It drove everyone's healthcare costs way high. And it wasn't until 2017 that we kind of rewrote it. They rewrote it and replaced it with the American Care Act, which is not nearly as bad as the Affordable Care Act, but I don't think it was as good of a move as completely deleting the idea entirely. I think they probably should have completely repealed it, and so the market hasn't completely recovered. It hasn't gotten back down to that $650 for a couple. It's still kind of high. So I mean, for a couple, I think you might be paying around like $700 or $800 a month, with similar cost as what he's saying because of that fluctuation that happened during President Obama's time in office. So that was kind of a bad move financially as far as health insurance went. Getting the government involved in finance usually ruins everything. As we learned this year, the government's in like $22 trillion worth of debt or something like that. I don't know. Anyways, the point is $600 a month is probably not going to happen. Maybe $500 or $600 a month for a single adult. But yeah.
Say yes. Big time. And so the deal is then that we said, okay, what about the HSA? The HSA is only $316 a month, not $640 a month, but it's got a $5,650 deductible. Whoa, big deductible. So you're not trotting down to the doctor with that deductible unless you're just like really feeling like you're not going to make it. You don't want to wander in there and not really have a clue. I mean, doc, I'm just kind of feeling bad. No, you're really sick before you go like this, okay? And after $5,650, the insurance company pays 100%. Now, that's a pretty cool feature right there. So you're taking the first $5,650 worth of risk. After that, they are taking the rest of the risk. So what's the deal? Well, gosh, I'm saving $300 and something a month. That's $3,888 a year difference in those two policies, almost $4,000 that I'm saving. I'm taking $5,000 more risk, so I got to go a little more than a year without many events. So if you've got chronic illness in your family where people are having to go to the doctor for a lot of different things, then you do not want the HSA because you're going to be burning into some big bucks. I mean, you'll burn through the extra $3,000 you're saving pretty quick out of pocket if you're running through $6,000 worth of medical bills a year. But the Ramsey family, we're really a healthy bunch. We hardly ever go to the doc. I mean, it's a big, hairy deal if we go to the doc. So it's been a very good risk for us because we've never met the deductible since we've had our HSA. And the cool thing is this. You get to take the deductible amount and put it, if you want to, up to that $5,650 a year into a savings account and create a tax deduction regardless of your income. I can write this off. This is weird. They just hadn't figured it out yet. They'll take it away from me soon. But you can write off, no matter your income, $5,600 a year, and then I can spend that money in the health savings account on health needs of any kind. So if I go in the doc and I've got to pay the doc, I can pay it out of that account, and I never pay taxes on it if it's spent on health insurance, if it's spent on health needs of some kind. And so it's tax-free health care out of my pocket in a savings account. If I don't use it, it grows without paying taxes on it, tax deferred. And so what we've done is whatever mine or doctor bills we had, we just paid for them, and I just use this thing as another way to save and invest money, tax deferred and tax free. It's a tax break then, but I've got another big hairy emergency fund over here called an HSA that's really built up over the years. You do $5,000 a year for several years, you got a little bit of money thrown in there, don't you? And you got the extra $5,000 because you're paying $4,000 less. And if you just took the money you were spending already, you can almost fund the thing every year with just what you would have spent. If you were going to spend $640, and on the HSA, you keep spending $640. So here's the way to think about this. Again, if your family is fairly healthy, this makes a lot of sense, because with Plan 1 there, with the PPO, you send the company $640 a month, thousands and thousands of dollars a year. If you don't go to the doctor and use the insurance, they keep all the money. In Plan 2, you send them about $3,600 a year. You put the same, about another $4,000 into a savings account. If you don't go to the doctor, you keep the $4,000. I like that plan, okay? And this will also give you an incentive to stay healthy and do healthy things. Really, really, really a good idea.
You're listening to The Dave Ramsey Show. Thank you for being with us, America. We're glad you're here. Jeremy is with us. He's a freshman in college, 19 years old in Salt Lake City. Hey, Jeremy,
Fake
what's
video.
up in your world?
Why do I need health insurance while I'm in college? I mean, I'm fairly healthy.
Accidents
Ah,
happen.
Jeremy's an idiot.
You can be walking to class and step off the curb and twist your ankle. Things happen to folks, and you need health insurance. The number one cause of bankruptcy in America today is financial problems due to health insurance not being there. So the best thing you can do is, if your parents have a policy, jump onto theirs. It won't cost much at all for them to add you, keep you under the family plan. At 19, you definitely qualify for that as a college student. So it shouldn't cost much at all. And even if not, even if you go into the open market as a 19-year-old buying your policy on your own, it's still not a bunch of money, and you're taking one of the biggest financial risks you can possibly take walking around without health insurance. So always have health insurance.
Yeah,
just because you're healthy now doesn't mean you're always going to be.
Okay, so that's how we can always tell that these are fake videos, because we watched the real ones. He's not that kind on the air. On the air, he would have said, Jeremy, you're an idiot. Okay, yeah. I think I've got so many stories about how much it costs for healthcare, and he's right. That is the number one thing that bankrupts people in America. For example, what an incredibly huge healthcare cost. You guys probably all know my twin sons by now. Before my twin sons were born, they both decided that they were going to try to be born like 3 or 4 months early. So my wife went into labor really early as far as pregnancy is concerned. And so we took her to the doctor and trying to figure out what's going on. And like, oh, well, you're having contractions. You're going into labor. And that was way too early for kids to be born and survive. So what they did is they ended up making her an inpatient in the hospital. And she ended up living at the hospital for 10 and a half weeks with constant medication for 10 and a half weeks. At the end of the 10 and a half weeks, and after she finally got released from the hospital and the kids were born, when it was all said and done, as far as medical care and medical bills for my wife to stay in the hospital and my kids to be born, I think the total was, I have to do this in bits and pieces, sorry. The hospital, the 10 and a half week stay for my wife ended up costing about $460,000 or something like that. That was the initial, this was the actual cost. This isn't what I paid, because I had good health insurance. And I still have good health insurance. Hopefully that's true by the time you guys are watching this, if this is one of those future years. So I had really good health insurance at the time, and so her was, I want to say, like $470,000, something around there. Each son being born was about $60,000 a piece. So if we do about 120 plus the 470, we're looking at about 690, just under $700,000, just for my sons to be born. And the reason why I bring this up is because my insurance was good. My insurance covered it. We were able to pay for it. We didn't reach that cap where the insurance said, okay, we don't pay anymore. our deductible was not so high to where we couldn't afford the deductible. And the insurance said, okay, well, we're not paying until you pay that deductible. The reason why I bring this up is because the floor of the hospital that my wife was staying on, she was not the only pregnant person that year that had gone into labor early. The floor of the hospital was filled with everyone that was gone into labor early, a bunch of cases just like hers. And pretty much the only thing that was stopping those women from going into pregnancy earlier, where it was unsafe for them or their children, was the fact that they were staying in the hospital getting the constant medicine every single day to prevent contractions and prevent labor. The sad thing about being on that floor of the hospital is about once a week there was a family that had to get kicked out of the floor because they hit that cap and their insurance stopped paying, or they couldn't afford their premium and their insurance stopped paying. Because they said, hey, if you can't afford your premium, we're not going to pay for this care anymore. Or, you know what, hey, your coverage only went up to $300,000. We're not going to pay for this care anymore. And those people had to leave that wing of the hospital and pretty much cross their fingers and pray to God that everything worked out fine. So not a good place to be if you're short on the insurance. Also, if you're a young person and you're like my friend Sawyer who crashes his motorcycle, or let's just say you're on a fishing accident. Accidents happen, all right? Your body is not as resilient as you think it is. It's weak and feeble. You can break very easily, and it's very expensive to fix you. So, if you want to be a paraplegic for the rest of your life, if you want to be crippled, then sure, don't pay health insurance. If you want to be broke, don't get health insurance. But it's definitely one of the dumbest decisions you can ever make to not have health insurance. So, with that said, I'll stop ranting and we'll finish the video.
At all. And even if you go into the open market as a 19-year-old buying your policy on your own, it's still not a bunch of money, and you're taking one of the biggest financial risks you can possibly take walking around without health insurance. So always have health insurance.
Just because you're healthy now doesn't mean you're always going to be healthy. My sophomore year in college, I got mono and stayed sick for several months. During that time, I was so glad I had health insurance because those doctor visits add up fast. Another time, one of my friends was walking back to the dorms one night and fell off the sidewalk and sprained her ankle. We had to take her to the emergency room. It was a really big deal. So she was thankful she had health insurance. But what if we weren't covered? We would have had to fork over tons of money to pay our bills, or worse, suffer through it and hope we got better on our own. You see, anything can happen. That's why it's always important to have health insurance.
All right, that's it for this video. Hopefully you guys get it and you won't be one of those dummies that just doesn't have health insurance, or you put it off and then you end up getting hurt and then you're bankrupt and paying back medical bills for the rest of your life. So don't let that be you.